Welcome, Rons, to the Week 5 edition of your favorite New Orleans Saints podcast, where we review Sunday Night Football versus Dallas Cowboys, the first quarter of the season where we've gone 3-1, and we preview the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, and we answer all of your fascinating and well-worded questions. And guys, don't forget, 5:20 p.m., 12:80 a.m., you'll find us with Corey Johnson. Enjoy the show.
Look at it. Uptown people like, yeah. People up in Gretna like, yeah. Mid-city folks like, yeah. People downtown, man, yeah.
Where you at, Hoodats? ProSaintsTalk is back. We're riding a heater, baby. We're watching a team come together. It's truly a beautiful thing, and we got to spend it all together under the overpass this past Sunday night. We're going to break it all down for you on this episode. First and foremost, I got to show love to my main man, George. How we living tonight, baby?
Ron, we're living lavish. Ron's pinch yourself. We made it 3-1. Over half those games, we didn't even have our Lord and Savior Breezes. We did it with Teddy Bridgewater. We did it, Rons. And Rons, it was a beautiful weekend, and I missed you in the Superdome, being my partner in crime right there next to me. But I had a great time with the wife. And Ron, I know you had a great time because you watched the game with our main man, Jay. Jay, how you doing?
Doing great. Just finished off some chocolate ice cream, ready to recap this game. First quarter of the season, we looked ahead and said, hey, we'll take 3-1. Here we are, 3-1, an even better 3-1, 2-0 without Drew Brees, playing with house money heading into the Tampa game this week. So fired up for the second quarter of the season, and Week 5 to commence this Sunday.
That's a great point, Jay. We are just living the dream right now. And had you just looked at this first quarter of the schedule, I mean, we said, look at how tough this is. If we get through this stretch, you got a really good chance of being one of the top seeds in the NFC. Boys, we got a real good chance of being one of the top seeds in the NFC, and I don't think I'm speaking too soon. We are watching a true team effort. George, I kept thinking about what you said on the episode last week, dribbling with the left hand, just like Coach Napoli or Coach Scullin would teach you. It's just like that, honestly, right? This team it's almost like a blessing in disguise that they're having to find ways to win games like they never have before. This was the most anti-Sean Payton win ever. Under, 300 yards of offense, I think? No touchdowns. No touchdowns. First victory with no touchdowns in the Sean Payton era. First time it's happened since 1998 under Ditka. And just as a forewarning, everybody, we got no stat Ron tonight. He's got a life. He's got to live it. We respect it. But we're just going to let the numbers and stats run wild tonight, okay? So it might go all over the place. But, yeah, first time since 1998. It's amazing what's happening right now.
I think it was the first time since 1898, Ron.
Not that wild, Jay. Not that wild.
Shit.
All right. But let's just take this time to reflect on what we are witnessing. We are witnessing the renaissance of Sean Payton. He is truly reinventing himself and showing that he can rally a team together and win with what he's got when he's down a Hall of Fame quarterback. It's amazing to see. I've just been floating ever since Sunday night, if you can't tell. But, George, let's get down into it and just relish in some of this. What are your thoughts on how big this win is and how well this team is rallying around Breeze?
Ron, let's just make this very clear. This is the best coaching job Sean Payton has ever done with the New Orleans Saints. He is a mastermind right now because he is well aware of the limitations of Teddy Bridgewater, and he's finding a way to win. So first and foremost, all praise to Sean Payton because he's getting just enough at what he needs from Teddy Bridgewater to win. And you know he has Teddy pretty well figured out, and he's getting what he needs out of him, and I see it and I respect it. Number two, so the Dallas Cowboys offensive line It's probably one of the few offensive lines where the Rons out there can name their big stars. They got Smith, they got LSU Collins, they got Frederick, they got Martin, and they got the second-round pick last year out of Texas, Connor Williams. Most people can't tell you. I can't tell you the whole Bears offensive line. I can't tell you the whole Lions offensive line. Those guys are household names to most football fans because their offensive line is so good. Our defensive line outperformed them mightily, dramatically, magisterially, whatever adverb you want to use. They were fantastic. And the whole team has risen to the next level, even 2 levels up. But none more so than the defensive line. There's not one guy I'm going to say, oh, he was great or he was better than that. The whole unit was masterful. And it is great to see a defensive line play like that in the Sean Payton era because really you have flashes of Will Smith, you have flashes of Cam Jordan, but just to put out a perfect performance like the D-line did versus the Cowboys, that was a joy to watch. My wife was sitting next to me. She couldn't really appreciate it, but seeing, those plays, Malcolm Brown sliced through the guards and hit Ezekiel in the backfield. We gave Ezekiel nothing. We quieted those Cowboys fans to a church mouse, and it was glorious, Ron.
Jay, something that George was highlighting, and I think we need to appreciate it for the fans, especially guys like me that maybe miss some of the stuff that doesn't pop in the stats. Somebody like Marcus Davenport. What were your thoughts on him this past week, and why do fans need to be paying attention, even though the stat line may not be there?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, guys like Aaron Donald, not saying that Marcus Davenport is Aaron Donald, but they can have so much to do with the football game without registering one stat at the end of a game. Aaron Donald against the Panthers the week before they played the Saints, he only had 1 tackle. Against the Saints, I think he only had 2 tackles. No stat, Ron, to look that up. But we all know how effective Aaron Donald was in that football game and how disruptive he was. Nowadays, with these Pro Football Focus stats and next-gen stats by the NFL, you can probably look into some of those more detailed stats to see exactly how these guys are affecting the game. But it's not like Davenport had big-time numbers in the game this past Sunday against the Cowboys, but he's disruptive. And what you like to see with Davenport is in week 1 against the Texans, when Deshaun Watson kept that ball, ran it left, I believe it was on 3rd and 1, scored a touchdown, Davenport lost contain. The same play with Prescott Sunday night in the Dome, Davenport realizes he has to stay home, strings it out. Prescott gets nothing. So I think what you're encouraged about is Davenport's improvement from week to week. That's what you need to see. And that's why I kept saying early on in the preseason, George, Ron, that this guy needs reps in order to get better. He's a guy that hasn't played the position very long. You saw last year in the short sample sizes that we had, he got better from week to week to week, and it was drastically better. So although you're not seeing sacks, Ron, I turned and told you during the game that I feel like Davenport should be on the all-almost team. Like that's the next level he needs to get to, because he's right there for the sack, and he dives on the other side of the quarterback or misses the running back in the backfield. I think that's what he needs to get to next, is finishing plays, because he's getting there. Now he needs to finish. But as far as what he is right now, he's enough. He's being disruptive. He's playing with extremely high effort, chasing plays down from the backside. And George put it very well. The defensive line is playing great. And let's shout out Sheldon Rankins, too, coming back from an Achilles injury. Simo told me, Dr. Simo, that he played 38 plays, and he was active as well. Didn't really show up with the stats or get a sack, but you saw as the game progressed, he got better as well. So a lot of credit goes to Dennis Allen and the defense for this game. As we said, as we've alluded to, the defense notoriously, along with the Saints team, have been slow starters, and I think you're seeing that. 3 weeks ago to Los Angeles, or 2 weeks ago, the Saints allowed 7 points to the Rams in the first half. 6 points. To Seattle through almost 3 quarters, they allowed 7 points. and then allowed them to get back in the game a little bit when they kind of let their foot off the gas. Sunday, the Saints allowed Dallas to only 10 points through 4 quarters. And that's a team that was averaging 30 points a game through 3 games. So you took Ezekiel Elliott away. You made Dak Prescott beat you. And those teams that they played the first 3 weeks were combined 1-8, showed what Prescott is. Really good quarterback. I don't know if I'm ready to call him great yet.
And this D-line is such a huge part of the reason why the Cowboys had 9 drives. 4 of them ended in punts, 2 fumbles, an INT, a field goal, and a touchdown. I mean, that is just dominance. And something that has probably gone overlooked league-wide that we put the league on notice was, we were last year's number 2 run defense, but I think that got overshadowed a bit by some of the faults in the secondary. But you're starting to see that secondary come around now, and we're really watching a complete defense now. And it is really just coming together in such a nice way. George, let's talk about some of these defensive backs, because you had some great performances by guys that we were looking to step up. We had some indications that maybe what is Lattimore at this point? We know he's had some tough matchups. Here comes another one down the pipe, and boy, did he step up, did he?
Ron, I love what he did. And everyone, all attention goes to Lattimore, for better or for worse. And Eli Apple's performance is kind of going under the radar. Let's give both of them a one clap. Let's give both of them a Dixie in the Dome. Let's give both of them a big hug. They both played terrifically. And Lattimore is someone very polarizing in the podcast, very polarizing in the Superdome, because his rookie year, he was sensational. And people had the highest of highest expectations for him. And so when he dropped down a notch or two, people were exasperated with him, calling him Fatimore because he lost a step, presumably. Well, that performance versus the Cowboys is as good as you'll ever get. That was fantastic. I watched the game again yesterday. Today's Tuesday. I watched it Monday again, and then I really got to relish in how great he looked out there on his recovery and his breaks when they were throwing to Cooper. But guys, in the beginning of the season, we see the 2 names that need to perform for this Saints defense to shine are Davenport, which we've already covered, and Eli Apple. Because we're not going to talk about how great Lattimore is doing if Eli Apple is Swiss cheese, if he's got open borders, just letting everything go, coming through. So Eli shutting him down, Lattimore shutting him down, that gives Von Bell and Marcus Williams way more range to do what they want to do, to shine. And no one's shining brighter right now than our boy Von Bell. That was a guy we've had debates about, and I remember Jay and I were very convinced that this guy is good. You know, some of the other Rons disagreed. I love what I'm seeing out of Von Bell. I don't want to get too deep down this rabbit hole, but we're going to have to pay him soon. And then how many guys can we keep from this roster? A great discussion down the road, because right now we're still relishing in this great Cowboys win. And Ron, to answer your question, I love what I see out of all 4. The starters right there, and even PJ getting his job done too.
Yeah, P-Rob, who I don't even care. Jay, we got this guy, Von Bell. He was so good Sunday night, you coined a new nickname for him.
Vonnie on the spot. All he's done, 19 tackles, 3 fumble recoveries, 1 forced fumble, and a touchdown through 2 games. This guy's playing very confident football, knows where he needs to be on the football field, sure tackler, playing great against the pass. It's great to see guys like this emerge, guys that you're really not expecting to step up the way he has, especially on the back end like that. It's extremely valuable. Marcus Williams, another guy that we haven't been bringing up a lot either for bad reasons, which means that he must be playing all right back there. It was refreshing to see him get that interception on the last play against Dallas. Hopefully that can boost his confidence a little bit and help repair his ego a little bit from 2 years ago in that Minneapolis miracle there, Ron.
Oh, I think we've come a long way since then, Jay. This team is riding an all-time high of confidence. And another shout out to StatRon here. Something I heard on the drive home following this one, in between calls to my man Jorge to break it all down. The Saints defense has now gone 30 consecutive games without allowing a 100-yard rusher. You want to talk about putting the league on notice. Damn, knock on wood, that's a hell of a streak. 30 games. You heard me right. Dude, last guy was in November of 2017. I think it was Perron. Look it up. All right. So look, let's get over to the offense. Jorge, you touched on it perfectly. Teddy did just enough for you this past Sunday. And maybe that's all we need if this team's going to round out like it is doing right now with this defense. I'd like to think that, maybe that is unrealistic to expect what we saw Sunday night out of the rest of the team. But you can expect a lot more consistency out of this defense, I believe, going forward. And I think now the challenge is you got to win some of these ones that you may be expected to win or you're supposed to win. Kind of the prove them right mentality, I think, coming up. And Teddy's got to just keep building that confidence, keep getting the balls to playmakers, and just doing just enough. Am I right?
He's doing just enough. And maybe that's all you're going to see out of him until he has to do more. And when he has to do more, he'll do just enough at that point. Because I think what you're alluding to is you're supposed to beat the Buccaneers. Buccaneers are good. They just went to L.A. and beat L.A., the Rams, that is. Don't sleep. When Jameis is hot, and we'll get into Jameis in the Bucs preview endlessly, but when he's hot, he's good. They're going to put up points. So there's going to come a time when Bridgewater has to put up points. And that is going to be very interesting. We thought that was going to happen this weekend, the previous weekend versus Dallas, but it didn't. The defense stifled them, and Teddy, again, did just enough. A guy I like to compare him to is P.J. Williams. He's going to have plays that give you a heart attack, like that third down and 2 minutes left, and he takes the sack and knocks us out of field goal range. And Sean Payton's livid at him. That's the type of P.J. Williams that turns your hair gray and gives you cardiac arrest. However, he does just enough to stay out there, belong, and make the plays needed to win the game. So before I get deep into clickbait, it's just very evident to me that we can roll with how Sean Payton sees fit, because Sean Payton is using him masterfully. And I'll repeat that over the course of this podcast, because he doesn't trust him to go full out, even though Bridgewater's making some good throws. You saw those comebacks to Mike Thomas. Those were Drew Brees-esque throws. So maybe inevitably we're going to have to rely on him to do a full game of that. And then we'll know exactly what we have to deal with. But with clickbait, we can use him a bit more. So if you're very scared to hurt your backup quarterback, if he's doing all the stuff clickbait does, then upgrade Barrett and let, Carr or Lil Jordan go back to the practice squad, because those little insertions of clickbait is what this offense needs to manufacture yards, to get the ball down the field, as you saw in the first half of the Cowboys game. So, and more Harris. Harris looks dynamite with the ball in his hands. We're going to have to see more of that if we find ourselves in a pseudo shootout with the Buccaneers. What do you think, Jay?
It's almost as if Bridgewater just has a feel for the game, like more so than any other quarterback that I've watched, where like he's almost playing the score. Like, all right, Saints are up 9-3. It's not imperative for them to score a touchdown. It's all right if we take the points here, or we're backed up in our own territory. It's 3rd and 15. I'm going to go to my first read, the fullback in the flat, and just get 7 yards and punt it here. It's almost kind of weird to watch as a fan. He's not really trying to push the ball downfield to that second level, which we've gotten so used to with Breeze. I think I turned to Ron at one point during the game Sunday and said, what about the middle of the field? I feel like there's nothing 15 yards plus that he's really trying to push to Thomas or the tight ends, or even just a deep post route. But you saw in his post-game press conference, they were asking him about numbers, and he said, I haven't played for 3 years. I haven't had any stats. So the most important stat to me is winning. And when he said that, I believe what he's saying. And I almost believe, too, that if it was necessary for the Saints to score a lot of points, that suddenly he would try to force the issue a little bit more and throw it down the field a little bit more. It's almost as if he's playing with the lead. I'm working on the analogy in another sport to compare it to, almost
I
as if
got
he's
it, Jay.
what is it?
He's like the pitcher that's got an ERA over 4, but he's got 20 wins on the season because his
Exactly.
offense just
Yeah, that's where I
always
was kind of
puts
going.
up 10 runs for him. It's amazing
Yeah.
to see. And you're so right that his play really does follow the tempo of the game. And I'm just going to use the analogy. He is a game manager. Whether he will admit it or not, it is subconscious through his play. It truly is. Jay, you were hitting on something so perfect there. And what the heck does this guy pay defenses, man? Does he just give them a cut of his salary? When he was up in Minnesota, he was blessed with one of the best defenses in the league at that time, as well as AP in his prime. Here he is, and all of a sudden, the Saints defense is playing like one of the best in the league. And this was no slouch of an offense. You could argue who were the Cowboys' opponents weeks 1 through 3. It's the NFL. I don't care who you were playing. Dak and that offense were putting up some
But
damn good numbers.
Does this have something to do with him as well? That he's so well liked that you hear about and respected that everybody's going hard for him, and the whole team feels as if they got to do a little bit extra when they don't have the superstar at quarterback. Kind of two different questions. I think it's got something to do with his personality as well, where he's got a knack for not only rallying just the offense but everybody around him, where everybody wants to see this guy succeed.
There's no doubt about that. Everyone that talks about the guy that's close to him talks about, man, you can't help but like the guy, the intangibles. And so you got to think teammates notice that. So I think that's 100% a real thing. You can't really put your finger on what it is, but it's working right now. All right. I mean, at one point in that game, people like to always go back. Don't people always like to go back to like the 2006 divisional game against the Eagles and the Saints having this big, long, 10-plus play drive and wrapping it up with a touchdown? Does that sound familiar to y'all? Like that comes up a lot, I feel like, when we're talking about closing out games and how well the Saints did. People may not realize just because it ended with a Will Lutz field goal, but in this game, we had a 15-play, 9-minute drive that just completely just milked that Dallas defense in the late third quarter, early fourth quarter, and just continued to set the tone. I think they had one penalty extending drive, but the rest of it was just ground and pound, and then check down Teddy. I mean, just hitting the open man underneath. I don't care if it takes a freaking flea flicker to get 8 yards. I'll take it any way we can get it, right, George? We talked about
your
any way.
Your Mike Haas play of the game, bro.
but my Entergy power play of the game was the keep by our boy Clickbait and just barreling over that Cowboy DB. What a play. They replayed it 4 times for all those people that weren't in the dome, and the terrace just got louder and louder and louder.
Hey, Ron,
I'm pretty sure
can I set the table for George real quick? George, I feel like there was a lot of plays where we got positive yardage, Saints got positive yardage, and then they were penalized. And a lot of those penalties can be put on the offensive line. What is going on with the offensive line?
Okay, 2-part answer. One, something's up with Pete. Pete's the weak link. Maybe take a couple weeks, see what we invested all that money in Nick Easton, give him a go. Remember a few years ago, Pete's rookie year, maybe a sophomore season on stat run to validate my point here, where he was just off. He just had those cement blocked feet, and he would just look clumsy. And after every play, he was hands on his knees, huffing and puffing, and he looked like a grandfather out there. He's looking like that again. And that tells me he's got an injury that he's playing through. And it's hurting the rest of the offensive line. Because McCoy, he didn't have his best game versus the Cowboys. And I think it's turning into Pete being a weak link. 2, the penalties. The penalties have been a league-wide issue through the first quarter of the season. And you saw this last year. Remember last year how they had that terrible rule that a defender can't land on a quarterback? And then that guy Hayes for the Dolphins tore his ACL trying to rotate from landing on the quarterback. And then after the first 4 games, they had a quorum of the referees, and they said, we need to change this. Right now, I envision the NFL having the same mandate in the same meetings saying, guys, we got to limit these penalties because league-wide, you watch Red Zone, you watch all the leagues, games going around the league, it's a systemic issue where they're overcalling holding calls. Some are very 50-50, and that's league-wide that don't need to be called. And that needs to be corrected to even out and smooth the game because with all the reviews currently occurring, it's too much. It's like the game is decided by the whimsical flag throwings of the referees in a way that kind of turns you off a bit. So that's where I stand on your question, which I think is a great question.
Yeah, Jay, and just to flip it right back to you, I mean, how many of those plays did we see this past Sunday night where you thought the defense was getting off the field and just out of left field? You got a freaking 4-second too late flag coming out for one of the most athletic plays I've ever seen from a linebacker. Freaking Demario Davis covering Tony Pollard.
Dallas's touchdown on third down.
Exactly. So it was a lot of adversity to overcome. George, I just want to highlight exactly what you're getting at and even more adversity. So if we're going to say that Pete is battling an injury, which I fully agree, I think we're spot on to, if the average Ron ain't noticing it now, start looking, everybody, because man, he ain't right. So you just wonder at what point is it too much for this team to overcome? Yeah, next man up. But at some point, look at this list, y'all. I mean, Breeze, Anzalone, Traquan, Caden Ellis, now Trey Hendrickson coming out that game with a neck injury. So it's really just, man, stop the bleeding at this point because, yes, we're, like you said, Jay, we're playing with house money right now. And we got maybe a perceived lighter slate of games coming up. But just like George said, don't sleep on the Bucs. So, Jay, at what point is it too much for this team to overcome? I mean, the injuries are starting to mount up, are they not?
Yeah, and it's particularly tough at offensive line, and you wonder about a guy like Armstead who didn't look great. How banged up is he? But you got to keep it rolling. I think George did a good job talking about Coach Payton in the beginning of this podcast, and he deserves a ton of credit. What is Drew Brees without Coach Payton? I think he took it as a challenge personally when Brees went out to up his game and say, I'm a first ballot Hall of Famer head coach. It's got a lot more to do than, just one player. There's 11 guys out there. There's 53 guys on the roster. Let's show them what we got. And I think you're here at 2-0 mostly because of who your head coach is. And it's important that the Saints go into this game and having a great coach like Sean Payton, he won't allow those guys to slip. And you're seeing a Bucs team that's playing better now, and they're not your same old Bucs team because they've got a great head coach themselves in Bruce Arians. Look, throw out the last season with the Arizona Cardinals and Bruce Arians. Arians was going through a lot of health issues personally, and that's the reason that had a lot to do why the Cardinals weren't where they were in previous years. Tampa Bay hasn't done a lot of things right from an ownership standpoint since they've been around, but they got it right in hiring Bruce Arians. And I think you saw the product of that last week with a guy like Jameis Winston and the Bucs offense going for, I think it was 54 points, a franchise record against a great Rams defense that the Saints played in week 2 and could barely get a yard on.
Ron, can I say one thing about the question you asked? One injury that went under the radar right before the season started was Cameron Tom tore his labrum. And we IR'd him. Saints IR'd him. he'd be a great guy who I would trust more than Easton right now to fill in at left guard, because it looks like Nick Easton is Lolito 2.0. He looks like a huge liability. He doesn't look like he belongs out there, just face down. I hope he proves me wrong. I've been proved wrong numerously on my predictions of players this season, so maybe it's good for me to talk bad about him. But Cameron Tom was a very under-the-radar IR who we could definitely use right now because he developed monumentally over the course of his career.
No, that's a great point, George. And you reminded me that I also left Will Clapp off that list. Now, that may not be a long-term injury, but he's hurt right now, and he wasn't active this past week. So let's transition, Jay. You're starting to talk to me about a little bit of that Bucs offense. And, man, you thought this past week was a test for the defense. I think most Saints fans had to maybe wipe their eyes, do a double take when they saw the score of that Rams game this past week. George, let's kick it to you and just tell us a little bit about some of the weapons that this Bucs offense has. Some of them familiar names, some of them maybe not so much household names. But let's get into this Bucs offense and why Saints fans and the Rons in particular need to be well respecting of this offense.
So, Ron, when we play some teams like the Texans, you kind of have to go to their depth chart and restudy what they're working with. The Buccaneers are a team we know all too well. And one thing they can do is move the football, namely in the second half when they're down 21 points. But one thing they can really do is move the ball. So Jameis Winston looks like Peyton Manning 1 week, and then looks like, I don't want to say Teddy Bridgewater because that's my boy now, and then he looks like Kyle Buller the next. He's all over the place. But when he's hot, he's good. So everyone thinks, he's not so good. That's Jameis Winston. No, he's good. Or he can be very good. Consistency is his issue. Receiver-wise, he's got Godwin. He's got Evans. They're great. They're very, very good. O.J. Howard had a very bad start to the season. Coach called him out, and now he's starting to develop. They also have Cameron Brate out of Harvard, another great tight end. The running backs with Jones and Barber, they're very okay, very serviceable, very Latavius Murray-esque. Not great, but good enough, okay? But what I'm worried about is A.J. Klein guarding Howard. Because as you saw when he punched that ball out of Witten's hands versus the Cowboys, he's a bit of a liability in pass coverage. He's a good linebacker, but there's one weak link on this defense. It's him having to guard running backs and tight ends. So that might be where we get exposed with this offense. It's something that I'm going to watch throughout the course of the game.
That's a great point, George, because, I was actually keying in, whatever reason. My eyes were captured on Klein, and I saw him lose the inside shoulder on freaking, how old is Witten? 40? I don't know. Guy gives him a step to the outside, comes clear across his face, over the middle, wide open. But since Witten is 40 years old, Klein, of all people, slow-ass Klein is able to catch up and punch that ball loose. That is 100% not going to be the case with guys like Brate and Howard this week. So, George, that is an excellent matchup to watch out for as we're, that linebacking core is awfully thin. And you've got to cover the middle of the field this week because like you said, you just do not know what you were going to get out of Jameis Winston. I love the Kyle Buller reference. I would have gone in probably 1 million other directions before I would have dropped Kyle Buller on this particular episode this week. So
from
Jay, I don't have it.
I know this.
It's in California.
Cal?
Is it Cal?
Cal Berkeley.
I should have just said it.
All right, Jay, keeping us honest. I love it. Nothing like good alma mater game. So, all right, Jay, the secondary, they are the weak link of the defense, right? And now you got Godwin, you got Evans. So can Von Bell be Vonnie on the spot again? Can Marcus Williams be the no news, good news defense again? I have my concerns, but I want to hear what your thoughts are on this week's matchups.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the Saints caught a little bit of a break last week with Gallup of the Cowboys not playing. Some said that he was playing even better than Amari Cooper through 3 games. So it was nice not to have to face him for the Saints secondary. Notoriously, it seems like Mike Evans, StatRon can't check us on this, but it seems like he's always given the Saints problems. He's been a very good receiver since he's come into the league. Eli Apple, George talked about it earlier, has played very good football. I think through the Seattle game, he's only had 4 completions on him this year. I don't know what it is after Dallas, but you say the secondary is the weak link, Ron, but I feel like every week they've gotten better with the defense. The whole defense has gotten better, but guys have emerged in that secondary. I think always with Lattimore, it wasn't as if he was playing bad. It seemed like he was always in position, but he was losing some of those 50-50 balls. I'm confident in the secondary, and I think the Saints should have a chip on their shoulder coming into this game, particularly the secondary, because last year, if you remember, it wasn't that long ago that Ryan Fitzpatrick and the Bucs, under that prove 'em right year, Ron, came in and put up, was it 48 points on the Saints in week 1 and ran all over them? So like Sean Payton did last week and aired the Sunday night game from last year against Dallas in the locker room, I think it would be pretty wise of him to do the same thing with the Bucs game from 2018.
Wait, Jansen, not only that, what about Lattimore's rookie year when he got in a fight with Evans?
Yeah.
These
Winston pushed the back of his head.
And Winston and our boy Harris out of nowhere and missile launched his old college teammate Evans. There's a lot of bad blood here. It's been chippy for years. So however you want to inspire the troops, there's many ways to do it on this very vivacious rivalry.
Yeah, no, it doesn't take much to get the juices flowing for a divisional matchup, especially thank you all for reminding all the Rons for the recent history, because that really got my blood pumping almost instantaneously. And so I am kind of concerned for myself Sunday. Jay,
Ron, before you, I feel like, dude, do y'all like feel your heart like booming in these games? I've been that field goal for Lutz.
Might want to see a doctor, dude.
I kind of feel that way when the Lutz field goal for Houston. I was like, oh my God.
I have shooting pains in my arms.
It's a tightness in my neck all of a sudden. Yeah. So, Jay, I only called him the weak link because we've just come to expect it out of the run defense that we're going to get teams in 3rd and long, and just inevitably you got to look somewhere to why you can't get off the field. And so that's the only reason I'm saying that. And so do you see something like just what you alluded to, week 1, where I believe it was 45-40 since we brought it up, comparing the first 3 games of each year. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where you kind of expect a team to come out and attack you in the air just because they know they may not have that much success against you running the ball. I mean, I said 30 straight games without a 100-yard rusher. You got to believe Bruce Arians knows that.
Okay. But we're not the purple people eaters or the iron or the steel curtain. I think it wasn't that long ago in week 1.
Rankin's back, man.
It wasn't that long ago where Duke Johnson and Carlos Hyde, a couple of guys that the Browns and Chiefs didn't want, that were castaways, ran for a combined 150 yards on the Saints. And that was only 3 weeks ago. A week later, Gurley almost had 100, and the other guy, Brown, ran for 50 yards as well. So it's not like the Saints have done every week what they did last week against the Cowboys, limiting Zeke Elliott to 35 yards. So I don't think it's the type of thing where they're going to come out and throw it 50 times with Jameis.
Whoa, man. Look, as we talked about the secondary, the D-line is improving every week, and they're getting into their midseason form already. And so, George, I look for them to take that midseason form and get out of this funk that I guess we're in terms of getting to the quarterback. Jay already highlighted that, yeah, maybe the numbers aren't popping, but they're getting the pressures. And we knew that in these stretchy games, we were playing these mobile quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, such a hard guy to sack. We never got to him, but we hit him plenty. We got him out the pocket plenty. That actually didn't help us too much. But then Dak comes in, and we had tons of pressure on him. We got some good hits on him, but we only got to him one time, and it was a pivotal time in the game. I'm not downplaying the sack by Onyemata. It was huge, but we can expect to get after Winston, I think, a little bit this week. Am I right? Tell us about some of the vulnerabilities on that O-line.
So historically, Doxson and Smith are bad left and right tackle combinations. But thus far this season, they haven't played as horrendously as yesteryear. So they've given up 3 sacks per game thus far. And yeah, they're going to I agree. I disagree with Jay. I think this is a game where Winston's not going to be able to help himself and throw the ball 40 times. And that's going to give the Davenports and the Cam Jordans and the T-Rexes the opportunity to pin their ear backs and attack. You're going to see some sacks. You're going to see us hit Winston, and that's going to be fun to watch because the real battle we have to win the game is the turnover battle. With Bridgewater, we can't afford to lose that battle. And we won it 3-1 versus the Cowboys. So if we can get after Winston and force turnovers, that's how we can beat them. He's going to get his yards to Evans. He's going to get his big plays, and that's going to happen. But the way to swing the momentum back to our favor is, 1, obviously, us not turning the ball over, and 2, Dav and Beast, Cam Jordan, all of our big boys, all the way to Shy Tuttle, getting after Winston, having him sail some throws that he does quite often, and let Marcus Williams and the rest of the DBs make a big play to move the momentum into our favor.
Yeah, and that's going to be huge, George, because y'all are already kind of making me a little bit nervous on if this game gets into shootout territory. We already highlighted all the reasons why. That's just not Teddy's style. I mean, of course, are we going to adapt to that if that's the tempo of the game? 100%. I mean, that's Peyton. But are we going to be able to keep up? That's my concerns there. But I think, Jay, are any final thoughts on the Tampa game before we start transitioning into some of the logistics of this upcoming home game, maybe even some fan questions? But what are any final thoughts you may have on this Tampa matchup?
2 weeks ago, we talked about what we wanted to see from Bridgewater. The Seattle game, he had to get better from the Los Angeles game. We said we wanted him to get better in the Dallas game. Did he really get that much better from Seattle to Los Angeles? Maybe in the second half or in the first half against Dallas, he looked a little bit more crisp than he did against the Seahawks. This week, let's see Bridgewater start throwing the ball downfield and do some things that we can all get excited about in addition to winning games. That's what I'm looking for this week, Ron.
All right, George. So we enter week 5. Week 5, and we're 3-1. But give us some final reflections on 3-1.
Okay, we've been some bad boys. We should all be locked up in the county jail for not having talked about Kamara in the Cowboys game, in the Seahawks game. He has been superhuman. He has been outstanding. That second half run he had on the right side was, if you watch you just if I ever get dementia or have Alzheimer's, just put that play on loop for the rest of my life and I'll die a happy man. That was amazing, sensational. So Kamara needs to get a little more praise, because what y'all said about how Bridgewater needs to buy or thank his defense, he needs to thank Kamara, the ultimate bailout option in the NFL. That's the guy that deserves more praise. And Ron, let's talk about some of these unsung heroes of the first quarter of the season. So we drafted McCoy, and we stuffed him right in the center of one of the best offensive line units in the NFL, and he's looked better than Unger last year. So hats off to him. Shy Tuttle, I couldn't have told you anything about Shy Tuttle a month ago, and now he usurped our many other DTs on this lineup, and he's getting a lot of rotational plays, and he's playing well. He's next to big names, first rounders, and he looks like he belongs. So hats off to Shy Tuttle. Hey, not all news is good news. Boy, I got some things wrong in this offseason predictions. I thought Latavius Murray would be Mark Ingram-esque. He's not. And that can be down the road. We get to dive into what's going wrong with Latavius. Is he just not getting the carries to get in a rhythm to really produce and shine? Maybe. But the bigger issue is Jansen and I were way off on Jared Cook. Way off. And that doesn't
Hey,
look like.
still a lot of season to go. Still a lot.
Sure,
of
we're
season.
talking about the first quarter. So in the first quarter, it looks like, man, this guy's been a disappointment thus far. So those are my takes on the first quarter of the season.
George, you want to talk about getting locked up? I don't think we talked about him one bit last week. I know I didn't talk about him with Hellman in terms of matchups, and you just didn't talk about him in your full first quarter preview. But the man that got paid this offseason, Mike Thomas, has come out and proven that he's still that guy, and you still can't guard Mike. 9 targets, 9 catches this past week. I think he was just under 100 yards. My fantasy team would have loved to have him punch it in the end zone one of them times, but the guy's still getting it done. Teddy, Breeze, doesn't matter, still getting it done. I'll go ahead and eat some crow myself, George, if we're just having all these come to Jesus moments or maybe come to Breeze's moments on the podcast. And I'll eat some big crow on Taysom Hill, man, and Teddy primarily. I was all in on the Taysom train, Team Mormon Missile, Church of the Latter-day Saints, you name it. And, hey, I'm happy to be proven wrong, man. How could you be upset in a time like this? We are truly living the fantasy life right now. So, gentlemen, this weekend is going to be the first time that the Saints are kicking off at noon. What? We're freaking NFC South Central Time Zone team. We got to wait 5 weeks for the usual Sunday noon kickoff. Bringing it back to the roots. This is routine for us. No Saints home game is routine. I don't want that to be a misnomer, but this is habitual for us. We know the tempo. We know the time. This ain't the West Coast traveling over to the East Coast. The body clock's not going to be messed up this time around. I expect Boogs to be right on cue with 6 LaCroix in before kickoff, just run into that bathroom all first quarter long. George, how nice is it to just be back in the routine this Sunday?
I love it, man. I love it, going back to our roots, St. Rita Mass, and you head straight to the Dome like the good old days. Ron, this is traditional. This is like black shirt and gold pants, high noon kickoff. That's what we like. We all have a good routine when it comes to that. We know how to handle that properly. It's like Popeyes on Super Sunday, man. I love these noon kickoffs. You know, all those other stuff, that's fun. But it's too much of a good thing. It brings you out of your routine. It's like eating too much candy. No, give me a steak and potatoes. That's what Sunday 12 o'clock kickoff is all about. And guys, you weren't UTO on Poydras and Galvez Sunday night. You missed out. You know, for some, they say we got out there too late. But guys, it's a marathon. You know, it's a marathon. We got it there 4 o'clock. We'll probably be getting out there around 10:37 a.m. for the Buccaneers game. We'll be out there again. Come on by. Rob will answer any question you may have. Jay will shake your hand and kiss your baby. Whatever you want to do, we're there for you.
Yeah, we're talking to you, CUNY. Where you at, dude? Don't just give us this crap. Oh, bro, y'all ain't out here yet.
Salty ass.
So, all right. Yeah, all right. Enough negative vibes. Let's talk about the positive vibes. George, you talked about traditional, like, black tops, gold pants. And we got to touch on this. Back-to-back weeks of the color rush. You know, Peyton is one of these guys that's superstitious about the uniforms. Could he possibly influence the league and Nike to keep the color rush rolling week after week after week? Or do we expect to see us go back to the black on black at some point this season? I have to look into this a little bit more because, you know, the fans and the Rons in particular love the color rush. Am I right, Jay?
Do you only get to wear it twice? Is that the deal?
No, I have no idea what the rules are. I just think it's odd that they wore it back-to-back weeks, but I'm not complaining because they're 2-0
and they're slick.
The mojo is flowing.
I think there's some teams where the color rush just doesn't look right, but the Saints, that all white, that looks pretty damn good.
Yeah, if you're Seattle, you can't be color rushing every week with that lime green outfit that they do.
That looks pretty nice too, though.
Nah, bro. That ain't.
I'm a fan, bro.
Pacific NOLA West has to object to that crap. No, man. That's like I'm watching an Oregon game, but the color on my TV's off. It's terrible. So, okay. So this weekend we talked about
fashion talk.
I apologize for that, George. All right, we can get back on topic. we get back on topic, and a critical topic for maybe some newcomers that are coming out this weekend. I see you, Drew. See you, Pops. So noon kickoff, George. That means the sun will be at its highest point. Am I right, sweaters? At kickoff. So that's going to bring all kinds of different weather elements. We've been talking all these primetime games, these afternoon games. You don't know when the highs are high. You don't know when the lows are lows. When sunrise, when sunset. We got to know. And that's why we had to bring back Red the Weatherman.
Hey, Rons, it's Red, the Weatherman. And whether you like it or not, the New Orleans Saints are in first place in the NFC South. Speaking of the division, Rons, we've got another divisional game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home in the Dome at 12 o'clock kickoff this Sunday. I expect the temperature to reach a high of 90 degrees, but feel more like 96 degrees with this New Orleans humidity. There will be a nice breeze of 8 to 13 miles per hour before the game, but not Drew Brees during the game. We're sticking with Teddy and Taysom, folks. Anyway, don't forget we play inside a dome. I expect kickoff temperatures to be a crisp 69 degrees. And don't forget, Rons, it's Red, the Weatherman.
Woo-wee, Red. It is getting hot in here. We're going to need ice chests again this week, y'all. I can't believe this. I'm hearing rumors from resident weathermen and other people at work that want to be weathermen, not like Red, that a cold front could be out there, but not this week, y'all. This past week, we were resorting to portable ice chests, the temporary ice chests, the AKA bring a bag of ice, shove a beer or two in there, shove a LaCroix or two in there, and wait for that to cool down while you're drinking this lukewarm one. But we get it done no matter how. We've always got the overpass to provide, George. And it's not about what you're doing, where you at. It's about who you're with. Well, I guess under the overpass it is about where you at. Am I right, George?
Ron, you're right once again on all parts, as always. And under the overpass, we get to connect with one another. And another great way to connect are fan questions. And I got one for you, Jay. It comes from Chris Johnson. It's a bit of a doozy. So let me read the whole thing. It's a bit of a doozy. And then give us a long-winded answer to have him completely satisfied. It's a two-part question. Here's the first part. On offense, it seemed that Coach Payton dug pretty deep into the playbook. Josh Stonehands Hill seemed to get a lot of attention, and the end of the first half was questionable. It also seemed that decoying Kamara was a game strategy. Do y'all think the play call sometimes got too cute? ?
No, I didn't come away with that take at all. I think if you have a tight end 2 on your team, right, I agree with the wrinkle where use the guy, utilize him. In the first half, Hill had a catch that Chris is alluding to that went for 20 yards, tied for the longest play of the game, along with the Michael Thomas reception. And then it was a beautiful play design, almost a throwback, Ron, towards our end zone to Hill. The ball was thrown a little bit high, but a Division I tight end should come down with that, let alone an NFL tight end number 2. So, you know, he called the flea flicker. He's looking to be creative. I don't think he's doing anything that's too crazy. You know, getting Deontay Harris involved on offense, using Kamara as a decoy is smart. You don't want to continue to hammer him week after week. So, no, I think it was all on the safer side, and I wouldn't classify it as cute, no.
Second, on defense, it seemed clear that the focus was on stopping Zeke. 18 for 35 yards confirmed that notion. Thoughts on that, in parentheses, in my opinion, excellent strategy, and on the defense, stepping up across the board against the top-notch Cowboys offensive line. Your man, Chris Johnson.
Yeah, it's a good question. If you listen to Corey Johnson, we're on there every Thursday, typically at 5:20 p.m. And our final takeaways on the show, we talked about how, number one, on defense, you have to stop Ezekiel Elliott. He's not only a top running back in this league, but he's one of the top players in this league, period. So for the Saints to go against that well-documented offensive line that George pointed out, I think Sheldon Rankins returning was a big boost to this defensive line. And then make Dak Prescott throw the ball downfield. He's a good quarterback, but when he's throwing the ball downfield, he's a little bit erratic. And how do you get him to throw? stop Zeke. So I think the Saints came out with a beautiful plan, and it was beautifully executed by the players.
Ron, this one's for you. If Breeze is available for Arizona Cardinals, should he play?
Well, and that is what Dr. Semo predicted, right? That he was probably going to be ready right around 5 weeks, and that was going to put him right before that Arizona game. And I have to use context. I mean, we've won these past 2 games. It just, in my mind, does not make sense to force him out there at this point. Even though we probably need to bring Semo back for a little injury update, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But my final answer is absolutely not the way this team's playing. Heck, we might be joking about quarterback controversy when Breeze comes back the way this team's playing right now.
Ron, I'd like to add one thing. I think that's a very case-by-case question. So let's say we lose to the Bucs and then they go on a winning streak, and then you're potentially looking at playing catch-up to the Bucs or the Panthers, and we're digging ourselves into a hole, and we feel like, oh my gosh, we can't lose the NFC South race this early in the season. An unlikely scenario, but one that could happen regardless. So I would agree with you, but I wouldn't close the door because we might need to win. And Ron, another question for you. This is a great one for you from our main man, Russell, Andrew's brother. As the Superdome revitalized Choppa last year, which New Orleans song with an accompanying dance ought to be revitalized this year in the Superdome? The Josephine Johnny, the Hop Boy Ronald, the Bunny Hop, or D, other?
Oh, bruh, Russell, what a question, bro. Dude, oh. See, Choppa is so perfect right now, so it's not ready to get replaced. But you got to be forward thinking, all right? Heck, I mean, they've ridden this halftime shit for how long? Hey, by the way, that's one thing we didn't hear this past Sunday night, no touchdowns. So maybe this is the transition where we bury it. Maybe we give the fans a week and they forget about it. But, man, as I was thinking about this, there's UNLV, do the Eddie Bow, do the Eddie Bow. There's DJ Jubilee, get it ready. I mean, known by many. Bit of a long dance, bit of a muddled dance.
The correct answer was
hey, what? I was going to say, dude, my question, my turn to answer. I was going to finally get to the answer has to be unequivocally Hot Boy Ronald. George.
Ding, 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 ding. And that'll be our outro. Thank you for playing, Ron. And Ron, do you have more fan questions from our friends on the World Wide Web?
You know I do. And I absolutely accidentally alluded to it earlier. But Juan is saying, can we get a doc update on Drew's thumb? We will absolutely reach out to Semo and get input for next week's episode and get you that, Juan. And for all the Rons out there that are paying attention to that rehab and recovery, I can spoil it and say I have heard that he's already gripping things. He's already got to watch himself, that he's not coming back too hard, too fast. And you got to pull the reins on a guy like that.
For all the Rons and Wans out there.
Hey! All right. So, Jay, this is just a cruel one, man. The artist formerly known as Statbird, what's wrong with Cam Jordan? Man, can you give the guy a break? He goes 2 weeks without getting a sack, and we're getting fan questions. What's wrong with him?
Yeah, nothing's wrong with Cam Jordan. Next question.
All right.
I fully agree with that. Who asked that question?
That was Bird.
He went against Lael Collins last week, the highest graded offensive lineman from the previous week, an all-pro right tackle. He was around the action against Seattle. I mean, it's
I'm
the same
befuddled
thing.
by that question.
It's the same thing we were talking about earlier. You don't necessarily need a sack to prove your worth at the defensive line position. So just because the defensive lineman doesn't get a sack doesn't mean they weren't productive.
What more does Bird want out of this D-line? Cam Jordan is leading that D-line charge. He's playing amazing. I
think he had seven tackles last week.
I love it. I love it, Bird stirring the pot.
Is that a joke?
Great. I don't know. I mean, he didn't put ha-ha or hee-hee after it. So, but I love it. He's really stirring the pot, getting some blood pumping, and that's what we need on the show. All right, George. We got one coming from our main man, Boogie, on his one form of social media, and he's asking, Is Teddy Bridgewater the worst starting backup quarterback in the league right now? And when is the next 5-minute segment with Boogie?
So Boogie, this is the 5th time we've chatted today. I want the world to know Boogie and I probably talk on the phone 3 to 4 times a day. To answer his question, no, he's far from it. Did you see the Jets when Darnold went out? That was horrendous. I would say Gardner Minshew might be the only backup quarterback better than Teddy Bridgewater. And when are we going to get more Boogie? Boogie, let's do a Thursday afternoon interview, and we'll get it showcased to the whole world Thursday night or Friday during the day, my main man. And I appreciate your contributions, and you know I love you.
All right, and we got one more, but we're going to wait for that one for game predictions. So without further ado, I think we're ready to recognize this week's Ron of the Week. George, do you want to take this one, or you want me to take this one? Because this was a great shout out that we got at the UTO this past weekend. Am I right?
You do the honors for our boy Tony Balboa.
Oh, bomb, Tony Balboa. My man Tony Brush shows up UTO this past Sunday, and George, being the conscientious friend he is, he looks down and says, "Man, what happened to the hand, dude? You slipped up with the knife in the kitchen, dude. What happened?" And Tony, I think I fought Barcelona a little bit last night. Dude, we got a little into it. I told him to watch out for that Barcelona bamboo. The guy might gaff you. You got to watch out. But for your pain and suffering, we're going to recognize you this week, Tony, bruh. Ron of the Week. You heard that weather report? We're going to need that ice chest out there this week, buddy. Hey, so shout out to the Ron of the Week. And without further ado, Jay, let's kick it over to our sponsored segment from French Quarter Realty. Introduce them, baby.
All right, here we are again, going into week 5, finished up the first quarter of the season. We had Gary Anderson on the show last week, filling in for Eric Wilkinson. Now you guys know, if Gary's on the show, do the opposite of what he tells you. He said, sit Aaron Rodgers. All Aaron Rodgers did was go for his best game in 5 years. Great advice from Gary. But back on the show this week, we have George Johnson, Eric Wilkinson. You can count on these guys every week to give you the best fantasy advice. George, a great 4 weeks. What do you have for the Rons out there and the listeners heading into week 5?
Thanks, Jansen. This week, I just have a few waiver wire targets, possibly even free agents, depending on your league. We've got a couple of receivers. We've got Geronimo Allison. With Devontae Adams' turf toe, he could finally live up to his preseason potential. Everybody was pretty hot on him at the beginning of the season, didn't do much, but now seems to be emerging. The other one is A.J. Brown. He's been a little hot and cold with a shaky Tennessee offense, but shows a lot of potentials and most likely able to pick up in the free agency. For tight ends, which is a tough position for everybody, I feel like, Jack Doyle, is with T.Y. Hilton hurt on the Colts, is now leading the team in targets. So he would be a good pickup to hold on to, especially as becoming a favorite of Jacoby Brissett. And just if you're still in an eliminator pool, I would save New England and go for KC. New England has an easier schedule going forward. And I would let everybody else pick the Eagles over the Jets, which is the highest line. I like to stay away from teams coming off a bye, even if they're terrible like the Jets.
All right. Thank you, George. All right, Eric, what do you have for us going into week 5?
All right, Jansen. Sorry I missed you guys last week. In real estate, we got to follow the ABCs. That's always be closing. Something that I got to teach Gary a little bit more. The ABCs of fantasy. Start your studs. Guys, don't bench Aaron Rodgers. This is the week where I'm looking at teams in panic mode, looking to make trades. Look for those 0-4 teams, 1-3 teams. And they're going to have underperforming players on their bench. Guys like Greg Kittle, Joe Mixon, Juju. I'm looking to acquire those guys. Maybe they're burnout on them from a slow start. Go after those guys in trades. try and, get 2 of your mediocre players and upgrade at a position of need. But definitely look for those teams that are in panic mode and try and exploit that, make some trades. That's it.
All right, short and sweet, more like a French Quarter Realty Fantasy Minute instead of 4 minutes right there with Eric. We appreciate it. Appreciate all you loyal Rons that listen to us every week with French Quarter Realty. Remember, nobody knows this city like us. And although our name is French Quarter Realty, we operate in the entire city, not just the French Quarter. We're in St. Roch, we're in Metairie, we're uptown, we're everywhere. So if you have a real estate need, don't hesitate to give us a call. The number is 504-621-9443. We appreciate y'all. We're out here.
All right, another prediction or another request we had from the Rons out there was, hey, let's give your all-time record of your game predictions before you give yours. Well, guys, I'm 1-3, so I'm not going to say anything till I hear Jansen's, who's perfect on the season, and I'm going to wait to hear my man Jay's prediction before I give mine. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, George, if it makes you feel any better, I'm actually 1-3 as well. But I'll take 1-3 personally for the Saints being 3-1. This week, some Rons would call it a trap game, playing the Bucs. Shouldn't be a trap game at all, with Tampa scoring more than 50 points last week. I'm going to say the Saints 27, Bucs 24. Similar to the 2009 season, Saints continue to find a way, continue to be opportunistic on defense, win on a last-second Will Lutz field goal. Saints go to 4-1. Jansen goes to 2-3 and 5-0 against the spread.
What you got, Ron?
Hey, yo. Hey, yo, hey, yo. So your boy right here is a surprising 3-1. I couldn't even believe it myself. I love this question that came in from Yancey, and I really thought, oh, shit, I'm going to be 1-3. But, hey, that's why you got the tape. So I expect another strong performance from the defense, but I still think they're going to give up some points. Would love to be wrong on this one. Now, all that being said, I'm still very optimistic. I do see ourselves growing as an offense this week. I see Kamara really popping off some of his usual highlight reel joystick plays against the Bucs. Feel like this guy just owns this defense. And I see the Saints actually cracking into the 30s this week. You heard me. 30 points for this offense. I'm saying 31-21. It's going to be a 10-point victory, my men.
Ron, I'm following you because I'm doing horrible in these predictions. So I thought Jansen was undefeated. Now that I know that's not the case, I'm following your example. But you both have the same answer. Saints are going to win. We're not scoring 30 points. We're not going to score in the 20s unless Von Bell pulls off another Darren Sharper. It'll be low scoring. It'll be a slugfest. We're going to have to create turnovers. We're going to win. A lot of Will Lutz again. We're going to have 4 field goals and a touchdown. We're going to have 19 points. The Buccaneers are going to have 17. We'll win an old-fashioned NFC South beatdown. So, guys, if you like this podcast and you want more, Corey Johnson, 5:20 every Thursday at 12:80 a.m. We'll probably have a subsidiary episode, maybe a 15-minute, 10 episode around then too. So keep up with us. We're trying to give you as much content as we can. We hope you enjoy it. You might see a Propels talk down the road featuring Justin Napoli. That's got more details to come as our man enjoys his honeymoon.
Live podcast at the Boot.
We have, the Boot wants to do a live segment at the Boot, which will be glorious, and you're all cordially invited. So more details to come on that. And Ron, take us out.
Man, all that talk, dude. There might even be some Italian dessert available up in here. Some of that spumoni, some of that sponsorship money. Am I right? Hey, so ProSaintsTalk, we out here, baby. Hot boy Ronald, walk like Ronald.
If you got it going on, clap your hands. Now check this out. We're going to get this thing started like this here. Left leg first and then right leg. Come on. Left leg one time. Right leg one time.
To the front 2 times, to the back 2 times. Now walk like Ronald. Girl, walk like Ronald. Hot boy Ronald. Walk like Ronald. Hot boy Ronald. Walk like Ronald. Hot boy Ronald. Walk like Ronald.
Forgive me for interrupting the Walk Like Ronald, but I wanted to reiterate to everybody the importance of Andrew being the man behind the scenes to get the podcast to you, the fans, and the magic and the miracles that he does for us, he can do for your business. So you contact George, Ron, Jansen, whomever, and we'll get you in touch with Andrew, and we'll get you rolling. You the man.
Now walk like Ronald. Girl, walk like Ronald. Hot boy Ronald. Walk like Ronald.